Welcome to another amazing episode of Her STEM Story. I am so excited to be talking to a very special guest today. Before I share her introduction, I wanted to share some statistics. Women hold only 14% of executive positions in STEM industries, and only 8% of STEM CEOs are women. Research shows that having women in leadership positions is crucial for promoting gender equality and advancing diversity and inclusion in STEM fields. It is also important for innovation and our ability to build more lucrative businesses. The low number of women in leadership positions is a concern for rising talent, and today we want to provide you with the right approach to ensure you don't fall off the career ladder due to the lack of leadership toolkit. I'm really excited to be talking to Priyanka Shinde today to help you accelerate your leadership growth in tech. Priyanka is a seasoned Silicon Valley tech leader with over 20 years of experience in engineering, product management, and program management. She has previously worked with tech giants like Meta and startups like Cruise, where she led highly technical teams launching cutting edge products in the field of autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented and virtual reality, computer science, sorry, virtual reality, and advertising tech. She received her MBA from North Carolina State University and Master's in Computer Science from Arizona State University. Creating a culture of connection, authenticity, and empathy within organizations is her passion, which she has cultivated into an executive coaching career, helping leaders accelerate their ambitious goals. In her free time, you can find Priyanka teaching Bollywood dance fitness classes, running or hiking in the beautiful Bay Area trails, and spending quality time with her husband and her son. Let's talk to Priyanka to learn more about her STEM story and how you can be the leader you've always wanted to be. And thank you so much for joining us, Priyanka.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is so exciting. You've had such a phenomenal career journey. I would love to ask you the first question of like, how did you get into STEM? How did this all begin?
Oh, well, I feel like a lot of kids in India, it was a given that if I was slightly good at academics, I was to go into science. So in some ways, I feel like it started there. It was somewhat decided. Though I would say that I did explore other options after school, including medicine, dental school, architecture, fashion design. Like I had a little bit of creative flair in me. Um, However, I had taken computer class in ninth grade and I
Mhm.
really enjoyed it. So I think that's what took me into computer field. And after rejecting medicine, to my mother's disappointment, as an option, I chose to do bachelor's in computer engineering, and that's how I got started in my STEM career, and then went on to do my master's in computer science at Arizona State.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then you have such a decorated career in tech as well. And now you've, taken the time to share these lessons with all of us and help us also do similarly amazing things in this field. So tell us a little bit about the starting of your career journey. How did you get your first role? Like, how was that being a woman in STEM at that time when you were starting out?
Um, First job, I would say, after my master's, I think it was interesting. I mean, at that time, I think the idea was just to get a job. I don't think I was thinking as much of what exactly the kind of job it needed to be. It was just post 2000, 2002, 2004. So there weren't a lot of jobs for foreign students anyways. So there weren't a lot of options at that
Mm,
particular point in time. So I would say that wasn't really as meticulously planned.
mm,
However, once I got into then starting to work and I started observing people around me, that gave me an understanding of how do I think about my career?
mm.
What needs to happen here? Then I think it gave me an understanding of like, here's how people work, here's all the different types of role that are there, and then I started thinking about my career as a career. I think
Yeah.
at that point it was just finish up your studies or academics and then get a job and
Yeah.
earn some money.
Yeah, that's always how it is. And I think because we start with that job mentality, a lot of us have to recalibrate and define what a career means. And I feel like that's where people like yourself can come into play and help people define that trajectory, because it's not taught in school, it's not taught anywhere. In fact, even in corporate America, people will tell you, go build your career development plan, and people are like scratching their head thinking, what am I supposed to do here? Like, aren't you supposed to tell me what I should work on? Yeah.
Right. Yes, totally. I think that's true. And you asked, right, how did your journey in STEM start? I feel like even when you're 16, 18, sometimes you don't really know what you want out of
Mm,
life.
yeah.
And a lot of us, what we are doing today actually may not really relate to what we started doing
Yes.
20, 30 years ago, which I think in today's times is great because we are reinventing ourselves. So
Yes.
I feel like today the world is much more forgiving in the sense that there are more opportunities for us to continue to reinvent ourselves. So there is no pressure that you have to be doing what exactly the same thing in a linear journey
Yeah.
30 years from now. So I say don't take the pressure on
Mm.
what you need to be 20 years down the line, but know that what are the things
That.
that you may want to develop in terms of skills.
Yeah, I love that. So how did you get your first leadership role in tech?
um Actually, the first two times a leadership type of a role was offered to me, I actually rejected it.
Mm.
And twice, uh, those were early career opportunities, and both times I had specific reasons. Both times I actually was doing one thing which I was somewhat slowing down because I knew that if I took the time then, it would help me later.
Mm.
Eventually, when I was working at Meta, is where I went from leading big programs to leading teams. And in my case, because my role as a product technical program manager itself had a very big leadership component in it, irrespective of me having a leadership position. So I got to flex a lot of the leadership type of skills in that particular role.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, when I actually took on my leadership role itself, I specifically planned for it. Like after that, actually, each move that I had, I specifically planned. So I made sure that the people around me knew that here's what I wanted. I
Mm.
wanted to make this particular change. I feel that is very important because when people know, then they can give you information or they can give you advice. And then the other thing I did was I advocated for myself.
Mm.
I took the time to build my skills where, say, there might be gaps. So I always took a pause, especially before big career shifts, because I felt that one, especially in a tech career, you're so busy, it's almost like you're on a hamster wheel,
Yeah.
that you need that pause to think deeply and think more strategically that what is it that you want to do and how do you want to strategize that particular shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think something that I like to tell a lot of my clients, and maybe this is a good way to frame what you just said, was is like slow down to speed up. Right?
Exactly. To
Yeah.
accelerate.
Yeah, it's so important because, I think a lot of people value speed so much more than strategy. And I feel like you can't have have a good strategy if you're so focused on just doing it fast, doing it, you know just not taking that pause. And I feel like you said, tech is very busy and it's continuing to get more and more busy. So it's very difficult to find those pockets of time in your daily life to like think through and meticulously plan. So you also mentioned something about advocating, and women usually, and I know my audience struggles with that, like self advocacy, and even like, how do I ask my manager for this, or how can I confidently raise my hand and say I would like to be the director of product management, when I don't necessarily have all the skills or all the boxes checked out. What would be an actionable advice to some of those women who are struggling to actually advocate for themselves? What do you think would help them if they're like constantly overthinking this?
um as like just do it,
Yeah.
because it's, see, if you don't do it, the answer is as good as no,
Mm.
which is in some ways most people are afraid of. So when you don't do it, it's almost like you are the one who is rejecting yourself.
Yes.
And it's okay. Like you don't need to have the perfect resume, the perfect level of skills, because not every skill is going to be developed perfectly until you get the job either.
Right.
So if you don't ask, you don't get it. It's as simple as that. In fact, yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody I met, and this is the exact same thing she said to me. That once I started asking, I got it. I got this trip sponsored out of me. I got this program. Like I just ask. And so that
Yeah.
was like really great to hear from her on doing this. And
Yeah.
I say you just have to do it. You have to take the courage and you
Hmm.
have to do it.
Yeah, that's very important. I think when you start to ask, you'd be surprised. A lot of people are very happy that you asked because then they don't have to think about you. They're like, "Oh, she's self-reliant. She's thinking about her career. We want to invest in her. We want to grow her." Because there are not a lot of people who have that kind of clarity or that kind of courage, like you mentioned. And I also think that it opens a lot of doors for mentorship, right? Like where people can now start tell you, okay, you don't have the skills, but here's how you get it. So in my
Correct.
mind, I'm always like, if they say no, I'm going to come back and say, so how should I do it then? You know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The other aspect I think you just reminded me of is they can't read your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes what we think, and a lot of women, we think that our actions will speak for our work, right? So we don't have to say it. But our managers or other people, they're busy also. So they may not know what we want, and they're not mind readers. And that is the reason why we have to tell them what, here's the work I'm doing, here's what I want, and
Yeah.
here's why I'm good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is very important. And I think that will can help somebody who's feeling stuck for a long time continuously grow and continuously get better roles. So, what do you think is the biggest myth that people have when they consider becoming leaders in tech? Like, what is this one big thing that they always wonder? Like, they think it's this, but it's something else.
Oh, well, I mean, when we think of leaders, I'm kind of gonna take it as we think about leaders who are leading teams, right? Who are managers. So actually, I can think of three things. They're interrelated. One of the first things I would say is becoming a leader is actually not the same as being a manager.
Mm,
So you can still be a leader in tech while having no direct reports. And I've seen this very senior individual contributors are highly respected people. They contribute to key business strategy. They interact with senior executive leaders. They are key decision makers. They're part of the decision making process. So the skills that you need to operate at such senior levels are the same leadership skills that we associate with being a leader in tech.
mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing, is that you don't need to have direct reports to be a leader in tech. The second thing, which we can think of leader now in the traditional sense, where you may have a team, um, being that manager, that leader, doesn't mean that you have more control, more authority. In fact, becoming a leader requires you to be more influential while having less control and less authority, especially in tech, because you're working with such smart engineers and all of these people who actually don't like to be controlled.
Yeah.
On top of it, you have more responsibility and more people who are demanding a whole bunch of things from you. So,
Yeah.
really, a management leadership kind of a role is not about managing your team, but managing all of these other things in addition to your team, which most first time managers don't realize.
Mm.
Um, and then finally, I like to say this, especially as I was doing this management course that I run as well, which is not all good managers are good leaders, and not
Yes.
all good leaders are good managers.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's a big distinction that people don't realize. And I think, especially when we're applying for these roles and trying to prepare for them, and then this chicken and egg problem of like, I've never managed people, I've never been a manager, so now I don't have experience to be a manager. But I think, to your point, like it can be overcome by highlighting the leadership skills, right? And highlighting that it doesn't matter if I've managed people or not, or have taken a lot of responsibility always been a leader. Like I've always shown up as one, and these are the reasons why I can get that role. I had a one side question which a lot of people ask me all the time, and I think you're the perfect person to answer it. Uh, just tell us a little bit distinction between a TPM, a PM, and product manager. Like just and then the leadership levels at all of those roles maybe, so that people who are thinking of starting, because you know a lot of times these are the first leadership roles that a lot of people are going to get into after being individual
Mm-hmm.
contributors before they become people manager and do other things. And this seems to be, like I was reading in the McKinsey report, that it's that first level of management that has a huge gender gap. For every 100 men that are promoted, 82 women are promoted. So basically, women are really struggling to make this first leap. And we see that again and again in STEM fields. So, what is the distinction between those three, and what is the level of leadership required to be successful at those?
Yeah, great question. So let me give you an overview. So when we think about tech, right, engineering is generally a very well understood role. So you have engineers and you have engineering managers and sort of that track
Yeah.
itself. Technical program managers are, and then product managers are two functions that we uh, basically call as cross-functional roles, or roles that interact with engineering. And I almost say this as they are like the trio of anything when you're developing software or
Mm,
products or services. These are the three main um, roles that are working together, though there are other roles as well, such as design and user experience and research and so forth. Um, Now, with product management and technical program managers, the way we like to say it, particularly because product generally, in simple terms, we say they define the what and the why, and
mm,
the technical program managers is more like the when and somewhat of the how, though engineering also kind of does the how. But in really, there's a lot of fuzziness between the product manager role and the program manager role. And
mm,
so, one way to think about it is that product managers lean more towards vision and strategy,
mm,
and program managers lean more towards execution and delivery.
mm.
Though the key word here is leans, which means that they might have,
Oh.
they can sort of lean into each of others' space depending on their strengths or the needs of the team or the organization. And that is where the lines kind of sometimes do get blurred.
Mm,
But as you can see, both of these are very people-oriented roles, and that is why they require leadership skills, because
mm,
they require you to interact with a whole bunch of teams. You have to interact not just with your core engineering working group, you have to interact with your other partner teams, maybe other groups, groups such as, you might be dealing with legal
mm,
teams, privacy teams. You might talk to external vendors, partners. You will interact with senior
mm.
leadership. So there is a lot of communication skills you need, a lot of other leadership skills. You have to influence. There's this whole term called influence without authority.
Right.
Though I like to say influence with authority, because if you're leading a program, you kind of have the authority. But that's the term that is used a lot. So you need a lot of influencing skills, and so this is where the leadership skills come in.
Mm,
Um, and these are great roles to have if you are still an individual contributor, but you're building your leadership skills.
mm. Yeah.
And so a lot of people do get into them for that reason, because they still get to work with a lot of different people. They get to work on the product. They get to sort of go end to end, understand why we are building something, to sort of taking it all the way through execution to launch. And that is one of the reasons I got into these roles as well, because I like not just coding, but also going from like the beginning to the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. That was such a great explanation of very complicated terminology when it comes to the first few leadership roles that people look at as they're trying to get out of individual contributor roles. And I see women being very inclined towards these roles, in my experience, and they being really good fits as well because of the because of the fact that they thrive in communities, they thrive with other people rather than sitting in a cubicle and doing the same thing again and again. I think we appreciate people dynamic a little bit more than maybe our male counterparts too. That doesn't mean that one gender is better at it than other, but I've noticed a lot of inclination towards these kind of roles because they feel really stuck in the tech space if they're doing core tech.
I agree. I agree. I think you will find the ratio, like the disparity, a little bit less in program management and product management compared to like core
Core
engineering.
engineering. Yeah, yeah. I love that. Excellent. So now switching gears and talking a little bit about this book that you've authored, The Art of Strategic Execution, Finding Success in Technical Program Management. What inspired you to write this book, Priyanka?
Um, yeah, I mean, see, in 20 plus years of like working across tech in all of the areas, engineering, product, program, I saw, especially technical folks like us, right? We all come from STEM backgrounds. We take pride in our technical skills. I think we have kind of been hammered that. We learned so much of it. We put so much effort into learning it, and we rely heavily on it.
Hmm.
However, in these product and program roles, like I just described, there is, and even engineering management leadership roles, like described, they're people oriented roles, very cross functional in nature. So, communication, leadership, they are very, very integral. And what I found is that the skills that are required to succeed in this role, particularly here in tech and maybe in corporate America, those skills were either developed late or they were not given as much importance as the technical skills or the hard project management skills.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I saw is that there was a negative impact either on the role, the perception of the function, or on the individual career development. And I myself went through some of that struggle. And that's the reason I wrote the book. Because I wanted to put those learnings, the observations that I have had in the book so that others could benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Because 15 years ago, when I was trying to get into this particular function, there weren't any resources. Then 7, 8, 9 years ago, as I was, when I was going through some of my struggles, there weren't like people who were there to tell, like, this is exactly what you need to do, or this is what the role really requires you to do. So I thought maybe people can benefit from it. And so while I would say that, yes, the hard skills are still important for you in terms of the execution, the art of the execution and strategic execution really lies in the soft skills.
Yeah, because I think that's also a bottleneck not only for people and leaders, but it's a huge bottleneck when you're doing projects and stuff too, because you just can't execute. You just can't see it through, and if you can learn that, I feel like it's such a valuable skill to add to your toolkit. I love that. Excellent. So I see the copy right behind you, and people who want to get a copy, we're gonna link it in the episode notes so everybody can go get a copy of it because, like you said, it's such an important thing that's not taught anywhere. You know.
Yeah, it's even like when we, for example, when we do graduate school, nobody teaches us how to be leaders. Like those things come in executive MBA,
Mm-hmm.
even in MBA. Like I've done an MBA too. There was no leadership class in MBA either. There's finance, there's marketing, there's statistics. There isn't. I think there are
Mm,
many more programs, but they're all targeted once you get on the job,
exactly.
once you start doing the job. So I feel like even if you're early, like 20s, mid 20s, you still need some those kind of classes, programs, something like that, where they teach you how to think about leadership, how to think about all of these different skills.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. I mean, one of the things somebody told me was like, yeah, they should teach, like they should also have this book in maybe some of the core like graduate courses that are tied to program project management and things like that. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll find somebody and do that.
Yeah, that's a really good, like, that's a really great point because when I entered some of these leadership trainings at my job, I was baffled that they were not teaching this to other people. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why does somebody have to get past this threshold to then get more support when they're already naturally probably good at it because they made it so far so that they're in these rooms? But if we taught this to everybody else, I feel like everybody can grow. And so what I used to do is anytime I would go to one of these workshops or leadership courses, I'll come back and I would teach that to my staff and my team. And I'll be like, listen, they told me this great thing about communication and we can all do it. But
Right.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
frustrating.
exactly. Hmm.
Yeah, awesome. So, since we speak to women on this show, I want to ask you how this art of strategic execution, maybe in a couple of like bullet points or maybe a couple of steps, how can this help women in specifically in accelerating their tech careers and tech, especially as a leader?
I would say, and this is a great question because it goes back to the core part, which is leadership and communication skills.
Mm,
And what one of the core things is of those skills is being assertive and speaking up. So it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is as women, we want to let our actions speak for themselves. We don't want to bring attention to ourselves, and we, we shy away from that. At other times, we refrain from challenging other people. We don't want to ask questions, or if somebody is in a position of authority, even though we know we may be right,
mm,
even though we may know that there's an important point to be made here. And especially, when in these kind of roles, in people oriented roles, where you're having a brainstorm, you're discussing something, you're trying to get the best product, the best service out there, you want to have all minds come together and
mm,
have a good conversation. So that is the thing. In this book, I emphasize the importance of these skills to grow as a leader, and how that not only helps in this particular role but in any tech leadership role where you need to drive important projects and to influence people or lead teams.
mm,
So that's how it can help women, is to become more assertive,
mm,
to really be able to speak up and hold your ground,
mm,
and do it in as and do it in a think of it as a way to build better products, better
mm.
systems. Right? Don't think of it as I am doing something just for myself, because hey, I mean maybe that's a hack, because sometimes we do it for others. We can stand up for others, we don't stand up for ourselves. So maybe think of it as standing up for something else.
Yeah, one of the ways that I've come to understand it is it's process over people, right? And to your point, it's product over people or product over yourself. And if you can actually do that, that's pretty much summarizes leadership for you, right?
Hmm.
You genuinely
Yes.
can look beyond your own interests and commit to the interests of the organization or the project that you're working on.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that little fear that might come in that moment, like, okay, no, is this it's a stupid question. Is it a stupid question? Right? That's the most often the common fear that comes. It's like, who cares? Like, if it can make the product better.
Yes. It's amazing. I think that's such a great way to say it, especially for women, especially because we take so many things so personally. It's hard for us to like separate sometimes the business from, from our own self-worth. And it's not a like I can't say that it's our fault. It's just how the world is designed. That's how we were raised, right? So we definitely have some of these things stacked up against us that we have to like sort of find some of these hacks to, not fall into those pits again and again. Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Awesome. So, what would you say is your biggest advice for somebody who wants to become a leader and, they really want to go for some of these roles, but they're not finding any headway? How can they stand out? Like, what can they do to stand out in terms of leadership?
Mm, I feel like I can't just stick to one. So I'm gonna quickly go
Go.
over
Take your time.
three things, though I think we kind of went over one thing. So
Yeah.
first up, courage over confidence. I feel
Mm,
like confidence is overrated.
mm,
Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait that you have to know all the answers, to have to learn everything, to have every skill. You don't have to be perfectly confident. Confidence will come to you when you stretch yourself outside the comfort zone, outside your comfort zone. And in order to do that, you need courage. It's as simple as that. So when you have the courage to say, speak up, to ask that question,
mm-hmm,
once you ask it, that's how the confidence will come.
mm,
So that's one. Second, we talked about this earlier, ask for what you want. So that means if you want a leadership position, ask for it. If you don't, you won't get it. It's as simple as that. But if somebody else says no, at least you know what steps you need to take
Mm.
to get to it. Or the more people you know or know what you want, the more the universe will conspire to get it for you. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
Mm. Finally, I would say invest in yourself in
Mm-hmm.
every way, financially, spiritually, self-care, because as women, we sacrifice, most women sacrifice themselves for everyone around them. They will think about themselves last.
Mm.
Uh, and when they do think about themselves, they feel guilty.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Wear your own oxygen mask first.
Yeah.
There's a reason they say that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't wear your oxygen mask first, you can survive for a little bit, but for the long term, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's my advice for you, because then that will get you. Because see, if you think about it, this whole leadership game, and in order to stand out, and it's a long game.
Mm.
It's almost like a marathon. So
Yeah.
in order to survive that, you need to do these things.
Yeah. No, that's a great point because I think so many of us are stuck in the short game of like just get the promotion, just get a better job, just get out of this one. Like I hear this all the time. Just get out of this one. It's like what's that going to do? Because that's one thing about leadership is you can see the long pictures. You can see the big picture. Right. So implementing that in your own career is probably like starting there is super valuable. And like you said, it's a marathon. So if you don't prepare for it, if you don't condition for it, if you don't practice for it, then you're gonna just go from job to job and never find that kind of satisfaction that comes from doing, good
Right.
things and
Correct.
impactful things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. Excellent. So tell us, Priyanka, how can people work with you? Anybody watching this who's interested in your work and really looking to grow and accelerate their career in tech, how can they find you and how can they work with you?
Yeah, I mean, I love just connecting with people anyways, even though we all work from home, can say I don't like working from home. So connecting virtually always is great for people. And here's the thing, I would say I'm an introvert still. I like connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I work, you can find me on LinkedIn, very easy to find. You can find me on my website as well, thepriyankashinde.com. So you can always connect with me and get in touch with me there. I work with emerging, ambitious tech leaders. And also, actually, sometimes I do have clients that are not in tech. So really
Yeah.
not limited that way. But I work with them on one-on-one leadership coaching capacity. I also work with executive tech leaders like startup founders to help them accelerate their success through executive coaching, strategic execution, development training programs for their teams and organizations. I'm also currently developing like group programs or maybe leadership retreats, especially for women. So that's sort of in progress, a little sneak peek
No.
idea here. But if anyone's interested in that or, for their groups or something like that, feel free to reach out. So yeah, just thinking about different things that can help people.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And so before we let you go, Priyanka, what's your favorite book? And you can't say The Art of Strategic Execution.
There are a few books I like. I mean, there are a few different books that I have come across. I'll give you a couple names, though. The Long Game is actually a good book if people are
Mm,
thinking. It's by a writer called Dory Clark. Kind of helps to think about how to again think long in terms of thinking about your career just beyond your current career.
mm,
Especially if you think about how you want to, 10, 15 years down the line, create multiple sources of income or and so forth. But one book that I would really like to recommend is called Positive Intelligence.
mm,
That book, I can actually pull this out over here. It's this one here, and
mm.
it really helps you. You can see it's all says it's negative minus sign, and then it says positive. It basically helps you reframe your negative thoughts,
Oh,
because all of us have them. All of us have this internal thoughts. So like the thing I was telling you about, the fear that we have, right, when we can't speak up, there's all this internal dialogue going on that
mm-hmm.
very moment, right? And so this book is basically one, it tells you why we developed this thing.
Mm,
It's almost like a survival mechanism. So it's, in some ways, it says it's okay, you have it, but now it's trying to give you actions and a way to help you reframe that,
Hmm.
and then to help you make it that something positive so that it can help you solve problems rather than paralyze you and send you down this rabbit
Yeah.
hole of self-doubt and self-criticism and so on. So it tells you sort of what's your predominant ways of thinking, and so how you, once you know that, then it can help you solve it.
Yeah. Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Priyanka. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us about the amazing work you're doing. I think it's so important. And I think very few people and very few women are actually representing tech leadership. Like we said at the beginning of the conversation, there are very few leaders in terms of statistics who are women and strong women like yourself. So thank you so much for taking the time to change lives. I think it takes a lot to walk away from such a phenomenal career and then do this work of service.
Thank you so much for the kind words, and it was really great to be here.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you again on another episode of Her STEM Story.